we have looked at pre-processing, such as missing value imputations, eliminating noisy data, normalizations and transformations in order to prepare data for mining or for machine learning. And then we come to selecting the method or the task that we will be performing. So far, as we mentioned, we've seen regression, classification, decision trees, and clustering. And now we'll talk about association rule mining, which is a type of data mining method. Once we choose the method, as we recall back from the first class, from the first lecture, we would extract the knowledge. And then we have a post-processing step. We would like to refine the knowledge and present the user only with the most interesting, useful, and actionable patterns or trends that we have discovered. If necessary, we can do transformation to a different representation. This means we might do some nice visualizations. We might reduce the number of outputs or results that we're presenting because, like, for example, if we have some big data and we obtain like thousands and millions of results, nobody's going to read through millions of lines of text. So we need to like summarize and present the most essential and useful and actionable knowledge to the user. So some transformation might be necessary in the final step of the machine learning and in presenting or generating reports and the answers or the results of our machine learning and data mining methods. Okay, so now let's look at the actual clustering here. We had a lecture on clustering, or briefly we touched on clustering in the first one or two classes when we reviewed the variety of machine learning methods and tools that we would study. And we mentioned clustering briefly. So clustering is a method, unsupervised learning method, where we group similar objects together. So let's say all the objects of yellow color are in this cluster on the top left side. These have some common property. Now, we don't know what that common property is because it's a form of unsupervised learning. Basically, the machine is going to compute the distance between the data points or samples or records and groups together the ones that are close to each other. So it will compute the distance from any point to any other point in the data, and whichever is the closest point, it puts them together in a cluster. So all the points that are closest to each other would go into the same cluster. That's really the only knowledge that we have because it's unsupervised. We are creating groupings of similar objects or items. We say similar because they're close. That's why they're similar. Close means that their attribute values or descriptions have similar values. And that's why when we compute the distance, they come up close. What values? For example, they have yellow color. So that's the same, a common property that they share. Value of color is equal to yellow or light color. Number of nucleus, 1. All of them have a 1 nucleus. These are cancerous cells, by the way. So they have a light color and one nucleus, or they're candidates for cancer cells. So this is clusters were created from a medical data set. Now the orange ones we see over here in the center, that's another cluster. These, again, they share the common property of being orange. They are grouped together because they are close to each other in this oval-looking shape, circular-looking shape. One by one, we add them to this cluster. So we start with the first one, compute the distance to all other points in the database. Whichever next point is closest to it, we add them together into the same group. So they share the common property of being orange color, and then they share the common property of having two tails, and another common property having two nuclei. So these right here are all orange. They have two tails and two nuclei. We don't know that. We don't know what is the common property that, or a class. There is no class here. Okay, that's why it's called unsupervised learning, because we don't provide classes. We don't provide example of specific class. Let's say these are cancer cells, these are healthy cells, these are benign tumors that can be treated and healed, and these are malignant tumors that they're not going to make it, these patients. So with clustering, we don't do this. We are trying to find out what are the common properties by grouping them together. I just gave some examples which can be seen on the visualization. But once you start running this unsupervised clustering machine learning method, we don't really see any visualizations of any kind. Each machine just computes the distance between the points and groups them together. Once the groups are finished, formed, or done, that's when we can start examining, well, what makes these objects similar? Why are they in the same group? Well, we can see because they're yellow and because they have one nucleus. That's why they're in this group. The orange ones are darker color with two tails and two nuclei. These most likely are cancerous. The one with the light colors and one nucleus, they're probably healthy cells. Then we have the ones down here on the bottom left that have one nucleus and one tail. And usually dark color ones are the ones that are cancerous, and more cancerous ones, but these could be really bad, like malignant tumors. While these dark ones up here would be like a benign tumors that can be treated. The malignant cannot be treated. They are like in their final stage. And the ones that are not colored, you see there are like some transparent data points here that are not really in any of the groups. They are not part of any cluster. These are the outliers, okay? These are the ones that we should have removed before we started the analysis, right? Because we do pre-processing. We're supposed to look for those outliers along with the missing values and other things we need to do to clean the data and prepare it for analysis before we start. We're supposed to get rid of these outliers, but if we didn't, hey, that's not a problem. They're just gonna hang out here as uncolored data points that are not part of any of the groupings because they are not close to them. They are outliers. They're far away from anything else. This is like the example that we had in the very first lecture there with a database of customers or database of patients in this case. And let's say the age of most of the patients is between 10 years old and 85 years old, and one of us and one patient is 300 years old. 300 years old? Do we have such a human being on the planet Earth? Maybe. Everything is possible. The fact of the matter is that most of the other patients are not of age 300. So this guy shows up as an outlier. He's far away. He's far away from the others because their value of the age is very different from him. That's why he's sitting here alone by himself and it's not part of any group. Also, if we're computing any averages, means, averages, medians and stuff like that, but because his value is way off the other values, he can skew the entire analysis because of these averages and means will come up way incorrect because of his because of this outlier, because of his age being 300. If we take the average of the age, most people from between age of 10 and 85 take the average, add one guy of age 300, guess what happens? It skews the entire average. Okay, so that's what visually clustering looks like. That's what most clustering algorithms do. Although we have a variety of clustering algorithms, K-means, the one that we have been looking at, is the one that picks a mean or a center. It picks a center, and let's say that we want to have 4 clusters. It's going to pick 4 centers, and then computes, instead of checking each point with the distance to all the other points, it just checks each point the distance to the center of the 4 clusters. Whichever center it's closest to, it places it in there. Okay, so that's what K-means does. Once all the points are being placed in a cluster, it recomputes the centers and starts repeating the process. That is, it's an iterative algorithm. It will keep iterating like this until the cluster centers no longer change, or they change relatively small amount. That's when it converges and it stops. It has discovered the optimal, I shouldn't say optimal, but the best clusters that it can discover. The thing with K-means clustering is that it requires us, or the user, to specify the number of clusters, first of all, and second of all, the initial cluster centers. And oftentimes these are chosen by random because the user have no idea where the centers are. Also, many times the user have no idea how many clusters there are or how many they want. So they also take up or provide that number by random. So because of this, K-means clustering can end up with very different results depending on which points were chosen as the initial cluster centers. And how many clusters did we say we want? The number of K, in this case, K is 4 because we got 4 clusters here. Another type of clustering that there is called hierarchical clustering. You see, K-means creates circular, round, ellipse-looking, well-separated clusters. With hierarchical clustering, we have a very different situation because the clusters can be nested and overlapping. They kind of like the nested Russian dolls, one inside the other, In this case, we don't have to specify centers. It doesn't use centers. We don't have to specify number of clusters. It decides this automatically. How does it know when to stop? It keeps, creating these clusters that are overlapping and keep nesting them. Eventually, it can nest all the points into those clusters in the entire database. When does it stop? Well, it has ways to decide automatically when to stop based on the jump. This means the difference in the distance from the current cluster to the next cluster. If we're about to create a new cluster with hierarchical clustering and the distance to the previous cluster is very large compared to all the previous ones we have so far, then it stops and converges. So it decides automatically the number of clusters in this way by avoiding some large jump in distance. Okay, so let's look at association rules mining as we have been reviewing clustering. Clustering was the subject of the previous lectures. Today's subject is association rules mining. So that's a form of unsupervised learning once again, because we are not providing classes. You see, they were, before we looked at classification, they were specific class. So we could have a rule-based classifier. We could have a rule-based classifier where the rule basically says if the color is yellow and there is one nucleus, then this is class cancer. It's a cancer cell. If the color is light and it has one nucleus and no tails, then the class is a healthy cell. If the color is dark and it's got two tails, then the class is benign tumor. It can be treated. If the color is dark and it has one tail and two nuclei, then the class is malignant tumor. It cannot be treated. So these are classification rules or decision rules. They allow us to know the class of the objects. This is a form of classification. Classification is supervised method because we provide the classes. Based on our knowledge of the classes, we discover the rules and decide the class of these objects. Now, association rules is a form of unsupervised learning because they don't have classes. These kind of rules, they can end up with anything on the right-hand side of the rule. You see, earlier we were saying if the color is light and it has one nucleus, then it's healthy cell. Or if it has dark color and two nucleus, then it's cancerous. We were determining whether the cell is healthy or cancerous. That's a form of classification. With association rules, there's no such thing. Anything, any of the attributes can end up on the right side of the rule. For example, if the color is light, then it has one tail. If it has two nuclei, then it has two tails. If it's got one tail, the color is light. Anything can be on the right side, not necessarily saying, hey, this is healthy cell or this is cancer cell, but anything. The number of tails, the number of nuclei, the colors, light, dark, specific colors, yellow, orange, purple, and so on. So, or violet. And there was a blue one, green one as well. So, association rules is unsupervised because there are no class labels and there's no classification. So how do we discover this kind of association rules? Let's look briefly. Uh, okay. See, there's an example here of those association rules. So, association rules is a new technique and an attractive topic. It allows discovery of important associations among items. Usually, it is used in transactional database. What is a transactional database? It is so it is not a database of patients or students or customers, but it is a database of items that were purchased together or a set of items. Purchased together, I mean, that's one example for market basket analysis. For example, when we go to a grocery store and we purchase some items together, like fruits, bread, and milk, that's a transaction. Hey, this person just came in and they purchased a set of items. The set contains fruits, bread, and milk, 3 items. So that's transaction one for today. Customer came, purchased 3 items, and left. Next day, same customer can come purchase a set of different items or exact same items. And today we might have many customers came in. We don't record the customers. We record the transactions of what they purchased at this instance, at this particular time when they came to the grocery store. That's an example of a transaction. It doesn't have to be a grocery store. It doesn't have to be retail items. It can be just like these cancer cells that we have seen earlier. It can be genetic data, biological data, um, climate data. Time series analysis, text mining. As long as it's a set of items, it's called a transactional database. So the association rules are extracted from such transactional databases because what they do is they look for frequently occurring sets or item sets. So we had these transaction of 3 items, bread, milk, and fruits. The association rules algorithm, what it does, it looks for frequent sets. Well, we just purchased fruits and bread. Are fruits and bread usually purchased together? Is that something that happens frequently today in our grocery store? Like most of the customers, when they came in, they buy fruits and bread? Is that the case? We can figure this out from the data. We just count the number of times when people purchased fruits. Do they also purchase bread as well? If yes, then how many times? So we have some frequency threshold, so to speak, and that the user gave for our association rules analysis. And if the frequency of those 2 items, that is the number of times they were purchased today, is bigger than the threshold, then it's considered a frequent set or a frequent item set. So once we discover all the frequent item sets from our database, we can start creating the association rules from them. So remember here we have seen some rules from the medical data here about the cancer cells. We said, well, if the color is light, then it has one tail. How do we know that? Well, that's because In our database, as many times as there was a light color, that's how many times there was a one tail as well. Every time there's light color, there's one tail. If that's the case, then our confidence is 100% because every time there is light color, there's a tail. 100% of the time. This means our confidence is 100%. Confidence doesn't have to be 100%. It could be color is light, tail is equal to 1, 50% of the time. Half the items in our database, or transactions in this case, records, half of the records in our database contain this. Light color, tail equal to 1. If half of them, then confidence is 50%. So let's go back to our definition here. The algorithm I just described is called a priori algorithm. This one is one of the oldest algorithms. But what I'm trying to say here is we just found out that if we have light color and one tail, then we have one tail. What can we do from this? The set of light color and one tail is frequent set. The set of if purchase bread and fruits together is frequent. We take that set and we create a rule from it. We say if somebody purchases bread, they also purchase fruits. And the opposite. If someone purchases fruits, they also purchase bread. We can create two rules from that set. They're not the same rules. Pay attention here. If someone purchased fruits, they also purchase bread is not the same thing as if someone purchased bread, they also purchase fruits. Why? Because let's go back here. Go back to the castor cells. Why? If the color is light, it has one tail 50% of the time. This means that if we say if it has one tail, then the color is light, that number changes, right? So it's not the same thing. The confidence is going to be different on those two rules. So this algorithm is most frequently applied to market basket analysis, just like the example with the grocery store. Bread, fruits purchased together. Same situation doesn't have to be a grocery store. It can be an online virtual e-commerce store like Amazon.com. The Amazon does this all the time. They find association rules. They do the market basket analysis. Every time we place something in our shopping cart, if we didn't even purchase it, they start doing this market basket analysis. And they would list underneath our shopping cart, hey, we seen you put in your shopping cart pizza. If most of the people that purchase pizza also purchase Coca-Cola, we're just letting you know because you might want to purchase some Coca-Cola. So they would list these associations or association rules right underneath our shopping basket to, encourage us to purchase more things but more importantly, suggest us things we will be interested in purchasing. So they help us in this way. All right, so how this method works, like we already explained, we would search for frequent item sets. In this case, the frequent item set is AB. This means item A and item B were purchased together. They are in the same shopping basket. A can be fruits and bread. A can be pizza and Coca-Cola, or for the uh, medical data, they can be color of cell and number of nuclease. Whatever they are, these two items are frequent because they happened many times in the database, and the number of times they happened, so how many times they happened, that's called the support. Support is the number of times the set occurred in the database, AB. We say it's frequent because the support is bigger than a certain threshold n. If it is bigger than n, then the set is frequent. Another measure here we have is the confidence. Remember, I said A implies B is different than B implies A. We're going to create both of them from this set, and because we can. But once we start computing the confidence, A implies B is a different thing than B implies A. Why? Because the way the confidence is computed is by taking the support of the set AB, both of them occurring together. How many times both A and B occurred together? Let's say 100 times. Or how many times only A occurred? If only A also occurred 100 times, then that's 100% confidence, right? Every time we have A and B, we have A as well. Now, if A and B occur together 100 times, but A occurred 200 times, then by itself, then the confidence is 50%, right? Because we're going to divide 100 by 200 and we'll get 50%. So that's how the confidence is computed. And that's why A implies B is different than B implies A. Because if we are to compute the confidence of the rule B implies A, then we have to figure out how many times B occurred on its own. If B occurred 400 times on its own and AB is only 100, then the confidence of this rule will be 25%. So you see the A implies B confidence is 50%, but B implies A is 25%. That's why these are two different rules. But what we're trying to say here is that the support and the confidence are two important measures that are computed for these association rules. Let's see how the a priori algorithm works. So, transactional database is here, database of items. Items A, B, C were purchased again, transaction ID 1000. Items A and C were purchased again, transaction ID 2000. Items A and D were purchased together, transaction ID 3000. Items B, E, F purchased together in transaction 4000. So let's compute association rules, extract association rules from this little database here. The way the a priori algorithm works. First, we take what's called single item set. This means the item by itself in a set. The set is denoted here with the curly braces. A by itself, it's called a single item set. How many times A occurred in our database? When we come out here, we scan the whole database, count the number of times A occurred. Once in transaction 1, twice in transaction 2, 3 times in transaction 3. In transaction 4, A is not present. So we have A occurred 3 times in this database. The support is equal to 3. If we are to compute the support as a percentage, it will be equal to 75 because what? Because it occurred 3 times out of 4. So A, we have 4 transactions. A is present in 3 of them. So support for A is 3. 3 out of 4 is 75%. We're going to do the exact same thing of all the other items in our database. So for B, single element set B, how many times it happened? It happened once in transaction 1 and second time in transaction 4. So the support for B is 2. 2 out of 4 is 50%. Then we go to C. How many times a single element set C occurred? It occurred once in transaction 1, twice in transaction 2, 2 times, only 2 times. Once in transaction 1 and second time in transaction 2. So again, the support for C is the same like the one for B. It happened 2 times out of 4. Support is 50%. The exact same thing here for the rest of the single element sets. We have A, B, C, D, E, F. Now the D, E, F are not shown here because our threshold for the support is 40%. This basically means user would like to obtain association rules with support bigger than 40%. Any rules or elements or sets which their support is less than 40% are not included in the results, right? Because they're not frequent. So we have discovered the frequent ones with support bigger than 40 right here. What we're going to do next according to this a priori algorithm, this was iteration 1. So it is iterative algorithm. In iteration 1, the algorithm discovered the frequent single element sets. From here on, it goes to iteration 2, and it'll be looking for frequent sets of size 2. So single element set is of size 1. It's got 1 element. 2 element sets of size 2, sets of size 2 are the ones that have 2 elements, will be looking like this, A and C together. It has 2 elements, A and C. The way we discover those frequent 2 element sets is by, so here are the item sets of count 1. You see the C1. Here are the item sets of count 2 because it has 2 elements like A and C, B and C, B and E, C and E. The way we create those frequent 2 element sets is by starting to combine together the frequent 1 element sets. So we look at what we have right now. We have A, B, and C are frequent single element sets. We start combining them together. A with B, A with C, B with C. Take all the combinations. And then we check if those 2 element set combinations are frequent. A with C, the number of times it occurred is 2. 2 times, because in transaction 1 we have A and C together. In transaction 3, we also have A and C together. So because of that, the support for A and C is 2 or 50%. The same for B and C, 2 or 50%. Once we find this kind of, that's iteration 2. It finds the frequent 2 element sets. In iteration 3, the a priori algorithm will find frequent 3 element sets. Now notice, every time it goes to the next iteration, the number of results or frequent sets we find decreases. That's because the bigger they get, their frequency gets smaller. That is, item sets with larger number of items, they are less frequent than the ones with small number of items. All right, so we have found here two frequent item sets, A and C, and B and C, by taking all the combinations from the two element sets, we find three element sets. So a three element set would be one that has three elements, B, C, and E, for example, or A, B, and C. From A and C is the first one, and B and C, by combining these together, A and C and B and C, we get ABC. Okay, what is the support for ABC? Well, the support is 1 because the only time we have ABC together is in transaction 3. And guess what? That does not meet the minimum threshold. So the minimum threshold is 40%. We have the three element set ABC occurring one time out of 4. That is 25%. So that is less than the minimum threshold. And because of that, this three element set is not included in our results. Well, we're going to check all the three element sets like this. And the only one that is meeting the threshold is the set BCE, which occurred twice because it's happening in transaction 2 and in transaction 3. So out of the 4 transactions, it happened in 2 of them. So 2 out of 4 is 50%, and it is better than the bigger than the threshold of 40%. So that is considered a frequent item set, this set right here, BCE. So what happens now? Once we have these kind of sets, A, C, B, C, that are frequent, we extract rules from them. Just to, as we have seen here, A implies B, B implies A. These two rules were extracted from the set AB. That's a frequent set. And when we go to three element set, we have a more complex rule that contains 3 things. From the element BC, from the frequent 3 element set BCE, we can create a rule that says B and C together implies E, or B and E together implies C. So please take a look here at this 3 element set and try to write down all the rules that you can think of from this that would be created from this 3 element set. Okay, so what rules did you come up with from this 3 element set here? From the BCE. the three rules that we will come up with will be let me see if I can type anything here. Oh, okay, the text is right here, just a different color. So we will get three rules from the set BCE. It will be B and C implies E. That's one rule. Another one would be that C and E implies B. And another one would be that E and C implies B. So these are the three rules. Once again, these are different rules because their confidence for each one would be different. How do we know this? Because the confidence of BC is 2 divided by left side of the rule. Left side of the rule is B and C, the first one. So it'll be 2 over 2, 100% for this one. Now, I'm sorry. Here, C and E. Here we have E and B implies C. Now, this rule right here, E and B, you see E and B, or B, said B and E, B and E. B and E support is 3. So BCE supports 2, but B and E is 3. So 2 over 3, the confidence for this one is 75%, while the confidence for that one is 100%. That's why these three rules are different rules. All right, so let's look here how are we going to have prepared for the lab for the assignment for this week. I have provided an example Jupyter notebook for finding association rules in the same way as we just described in here.